But then we get into the antiquity of art and the culture of art, and how we look at the pyramids of Giza, and yet we still have not come up with a really coherent explanation of how these carved pieces got into place.
Oh no, well,
or how they were even carved to begin with such precision.
No, I mean that's the miracle of drugs. Now we're talking about drugs.
Joining us today, artist Michael Zansky. Michael, welcome.
Thank you.
So here we are, the outskirts of New York City, this incredible gallery, loft, work, experiment, lab experiment space.
Pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, I can see where artists don't have the luxury of having spaces like this in the city anymore. When did you decide to make the move up here?
Well, actually, after I left Boston University, I decided that the prices in New York were just exorbitant. I needed a large space to do my body of work, and so I decided on a large space to do the body of work.
Right. So you've been up here quite a while then?
I have been.
Yeah. But you also maintain a gallery space in the city.
Studio space in the city, yeah.
A little unusual space because it is in conjunction with your day gig.
Exactly. I work on film production in New York. I'm a master set painter. I've done innumerable jobs all over the city. Right now I'm working on Law and Order Special Victims Unit, and it's allowing me the opportunity to use the space on after work and on weekends, which is at 20th Street at Chelsea Piers, which is wonderful.
Now I have to ask you, as an artist, did you feel that it was a negative to be working in the commercial world? Some artists used to toe the line and say, look, I could never sell out, I could never have a day job, quote. This has afforded you a fantastic paycheck and the opportunity to work when you had downtime.
Exactly, and the finances of it allow me the opportunity to work on the large scales that I frequently work on. Without the day job, it would be almost impossible to afford the kinds of equipment that I use in my pieces. So I find really very little in the way of downside to having the ability financially to support my addiction. So it's exceedingly problematic to be focused if you have a day job on what your body of work is about. It is very difficult if you're working very long hours and very long weeks. So, which is what I do. I work very long hours and long weeks.
But then you get that big chunk of time to create when the show is dark, or show is dark.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but I must say, I mean, in terms of my own career, I've probably done somewhere between 60 to 70 Hollywood movies and many, many episodic television shows from Sopranos to This Law and Order to many others.
Right.
So there isn't much in the way of a downtime. I'm just squeezing in whatever time I can find.
Michael, when a young artist meets you, are they in envy of your position in any ways? You know, your financial position, your artistic position, you have this incredible space. What do you tell them? What do you tell a young struggling artist today?
Well, I at one point gave a talk at a university in Florida, and I asked the students who were graduate students at the school how many people in the room, if I could see a show of hands, have hope. And a slew of hands went up, and I said, "You're in the wrong department." So I thought, well, I mean, there comes a point where you've got to be somewhat realistic about what you do and who's going to see it.
Right. And did you find the gallery owners, because you've lived through a couple of decades of art now, are the gallery owners, what is their position in all of this? Are they less likely to work with older, established artists? Do they take more risk, less risks than when you started out? What do you see as trending in the gallery world? Or has it always just been difficult to find the right gallery for the right artist?
I think it's always been difficult, and I think different galleries look for different things. I don't think there's a consistent formula for
Right.
evaluating what they're going to show and how they approach the body of work. I think every one of these dealers has some different take on what's actually occurring out there.
Right.
And of course, they're trying to figure out what is viable for them, both in terms of what their emotional connection to the body of work is, and as well as what they can sell.
So with that in mind, Michael, what has informed your work up to this point in time? Let's start early on. You got your degree. When you were, did you have one mentor in college, an artist that you feel helped develop your style, or was?
I would say that the teachers inform me in different ways. I mean, I have a strong academic background in fundamentals of painting and draftsmanship. But I would say that I was very keenly informed by the great tradition of Western art, all art from Assyrian through Egyptian to Greek, right through the Renaissance to the present day. So it's a multitude of influences that have affected the way in which I see things.
Right.
These are the cornerstones that I look for when I look at other art.
Right. Michael, let's first talk about these magnificent carvings. How would you describe them, and at what stage in your career did you decide to undertake? It's a pretty massive undertaking.
Well, just to discuss the materials, they're all done on plywood, either AC plywood or birch plywood, and in which case I've laminated. In some cases it's one sheet. In some cases, for the sculpture pieces, it's as many as 30 sheets of plywood together and then carved. And then burnt with oxygen acetylene carefully, and then paint is applied in areas. They comprise 200 panels that were done over a 10-year span of time.
Wow.
They are a compendium for me, reaching back to Assyrian and Egyptian work to the very present. So what I've tried to do is historically position myself, what it would be like to challenge myself in a way, what it would be like to move from those early Western schools of thought through the Renaissance right to the present day. And so this body of work reflects that. I mean, it's
Right.
like what I was looking for is something that relates to my day job, which is almost like a still frame and a still frame and a still frame that adds up to a culture.
Nice.
It's like a kind of unfolding of a reel in a film. But in this case, the reel weighs a lot of, it just weighs a lot.
A lot of plywood.
A lot of plywood and
Right.
a lot of weight. A lot of these panels weigh hundreds of pounds.
Sure. I mean, we look at one thing, we look at your board etchings, much different than your multimedia
Right.
sculptures and,
Right.
and how they're informed. So, I mean, you're borrowing from a lot. I mean, all art borrows.
Right.
You had the classical background training, so you know how to paint. I've seen your paintings, and we'll see
Right.
examples of your painting. How do you compartmentalize that in your mind when you go to look at a new show or you go to look at a new series that you'd like to present to the public?
Well, I have a few ways in which I feel that are significant when I do look at a body of work, for example, at the Met or any museum for that matter, which is the consistency and the coherence of that body of work, whoever the master is that's doing the body of work.
Right. So, Michael, tell me about the optical series that's illuminated behind us.
Well, I started in the year 2000, 2001 with smaller pieces, and it gradually grew, and in terms of complexity as well. I just find it a relief, in a sense, after the carving and prior to the painting, to be able to explore the idea of these multiple dimensions, because very often, although you're not seeing it in these pieces, The actual objects which are rotating are surrounded by 10, 15 lenses. So your perspective is completely and continuously in a state of flux and change, which is fascinating to me.
Right. And who informed this work? What artist, what were you borrowing from? You mentioned you were borrowing from one of the masters.
Well, in this, Leonardo had come up with an astronomical theater. No one has any. It's talked about, but there is no information about it. So I was trying to use that as part of getting going on it. Right. Also, the fascination of Vermeer with optics. There's a slew of optic. It's a very important part of Western culture, and so I gravitated towards it. Plus, the idea that a position, any position, is always open to change, as the cubists well understood by moving themselves around an object. Well, in this case, the actual object is rotating. The lenses, in some cases, invert the image. Right. In some cases, you're looking through, the object is moving clockwise, and in some cases, counterclockwise. Right. So the whole positional aspect of it recalls a lot of stuff that I've read about quantum theory, which is the uncertainty as to like how a thing is going to behave, although these things behave not like small particles, but like the rest of us, big. Right.
So, Michael, this work has informed your new two-dimensional work. How so?
They're tangos. They're circular. They're the size are 36-inch diameter. In some cases, they're 54-inch diameter, which are larger than the lenses. The lenses in these pieces are 35-inch diameter Fresnels. And it also, what I'm trying to do is create this state of off-balancedness in the paintings themselves because of the ability to rotate slightly changes meaning in certain ways for me, visually, right. Which is very much about what I'm thinking, which is that what's fixed, what actually is ever fixed. And so sure. It's fascinating. If you rotate something 10 degrees, 15 degrees.
So by rotating the canvas, you change the perspective, even if you rotate it slightly.
Correct. Every degree makes a difference in terms of the perception. There's something about certain things that when I'm doing do not look right. Mm-hmm. Certain positions don't look right. I have no idea why they don't. They just don't feel balanced somehow.
And is that balanced to you, and to somebody else it may be balanced?
Correct, exactly. I have no way. It's just my own instincts that are telling me this doesn't look quite right. I'm not sure why.
Interesting.
You've got, like I said before, in El Greco or Goya, emotionally there's a cohesiveness there. There's a coherence and a very, very large vision as to like where we are in relationship to the universe, even if we don't understand fully what they're about, right. And they may not have understood, it's still significant.
How about New York City right now? Where are we with the art scene? Is there any movements that you see that are galvanizing?
I could quote Vladimir Nabokov. Years ago, I read an interview with him, and the interviewer asked him, "Well, what school of thought do you feel your writing falls into?" And he says, for the artist, and he says, "I believe in only one school of thought." He says, "I believe in the school of talent." And I think that pretty much would hold true now. I think that talent is really the issue here. Right. I would say that my fascination runs the gamut. I mean, it's not just the visual arts. It's my readings in cosmology, my readings in psychology, literature, politics. I'm fascinated by a slew of things, and all of it plays some factor in the body of work. Right. So, I mean...
Keep the mind active and the creativity continues.
Exactly.
Michael Zansky, pleasure talking to you. Thanks for sharing your world with us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming here. Thank you.
Continued success, and we'll see you down there.